All right, Biggie. So, have you noticed that the past few videos have been really kicking ass? You have a lot of pressure on you today.
Well, yeah,
You've been doing well.
I'm actually really, really happy because it's given me the opportunity to take on some more questions and answer questions in a little bit more depth. And
Not even any training. It's like, even though it's just Q&As, people seem to really liking the videos. So
yeah, I mean, we're not in Gold's Gym, and we were worried without any actual training stuff going on, would it be as interesting? But people are hungry for knowledge, and so this is what we're going to do for now. But trust me, we can't wait to get back into the gym and do some of that kind of stuff. So we're waiting impatiently like you guys. But until then, let's answer some questions.
Yes.
Out here, a beautiful day in Marina Del Rey, California. Okay, so the first question I'm going to answer is, what's my opinion on meals before bed? The specific question was, would you recommend, for example, eggs and turkey, or would you go for carbs? What would you recommend? So, okay, so meals before bed. One of the most important aspects when you're thinking of a meal before bed is, of course, okay, so you're going to sleep. Most of us, although there's some people out there who don't sleep much, but most of us will sleep between 6 hours, 8 hours, some people 9 hours. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure that the body is as fed as possible while we sleep, especially with protein. So we want to have protein before we go to sleep. That's a definite. I don't generally recommend carbs before you go to sleep unless you're somebody who is severely underweight and trying to bulk up, and you have a wicked fast metabolism. Then a protein carb meal is fine before bed. But for most people who are trying to just maintain their leanness or get leaner, just protein before bed, and sometimes I'll combine that with a fat. The amount of fat that I will recommend before bed will depend on what source you use for protein. Now, if you're going to use if you're somebody who doesn't like to eat like meat or eggs and that kind of stuff, you like more lean protein sources like chicken, turkey, fish, egg whites, then I would add some extra fats into that meal for sure. And of course I recommend healthy fats most of the time. So again, we have the avocados, we have the almonds, we have the walnuts, olive oil, fish oil, those types of things, which are healthy fats that serve the body in numerous ways aside from just supplying fat. But what they will also do is slow down the digestion of the protein, so that you'll get a little bit more of what we call a trickle feed effect of amino acids. So what we basically want is we want the amino acids to trickle out slowly into the bloodstream while we sleep for as long as possible, so that the body is constantly supplied with amino acids and it doesn't have to break down muscle tissue in order to get those amino acids. So if you're somebody who doesn't mind red meat or cottage cheese or things that have fats in them, you may not need to add extra fats because those will digest very, very slowly and you'll get that trickle feed effect. I personally don't usually like to eat before bed. I prefer protein powder before bed, and if you're going to go for protein powder, stay away from the whey proteins in this case and go for a casein, especially a micellar casein, because this breaks down very, very slowly, somewhere between 4 and 7 hours overnight, which takes care of most of your protein during night again, and it gives you that slow release of amino acids into the bloodstream. Because what casein does, it kind of forms like a bolus in the stomach. It's almost like a gel, and it gets that way in the stomach, and then slowly that breaks down and it slowly releases amino acids into the bloodstream. So so before bed, definitely go for protein. If it's a low-fat protein source, add in some extra fats. And don't worry about the fats before you go to sleep. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to take fat because I'm going to get fat. It doesn't really work that way. If your overall calorie amount is within the range it should be, if you're eating your carbs at the times of the day you should, then the fats they're not going to turn into fat. They're just going to basically serve to slow down the protein. And then if it's a healthy fat, in terms of what they do, they help to, your hair, your skin, your nails, your metabolism, producing hormones. They have a lot of very, very specialized functions in the body which we need. So that would be my answer to you. I don't really care what kind of protein you use, but if you use a low-fat protein source, then definitely add in some fats. But for most people, I recommend, I think casein protein is the best thing to have before you go to sleep.
Awesome.
Okay, so somebody asked me a question about Anavar. Obviously, that's oral anabolic steroid. They wanted to know, can that be run by itself for a cycle? And if yes, what would be the appropriate dosage? I mean, can it be? And this was asked by a guy, so I'm gonna answer this for guys, because girls, yeah, generally Anavars can be run by itself and be very, very effective for gals. For guys, I'd say running Anavar by itself, I don't really think that you're gonna see very much from it. Its effects are rather mild, especially if you're looking for muscle mass. You probably won't see. You're not gonna get that big size gain that if you run something like D-ball or anadrol or testosterone, where you can actually gain on the scale depending on how many cycles. If you've never done a cycle, it could be 20 pounds. If you have less, but Anavar is relatively weak. It is safer in a sense that it's not, even though because it's alpha alkylated, that is going to be hurtful to the liver, because the liver has to break it down, and breaking down that specific type of chemical bond, whatever, is damaging to the liver. But it's more mild compared to some of the other ones, and like I said, it's a more mild steroid. So I don't really think you're going to see much of an effect. If you were going to run it by yourself, there are people out there who maybe have never taken PEDs before, and they're kind of afraid to try. And I do know a lot of people who will just try Anavar because they'll research it and they'll see it's not as toxic. So it's kind of like the way they dip their feet into the pool. But I think if you're going to take anything less than like 30 milligrams a day, you're probably going to see barely anything. You might see some strength gains. It's very, very good for strength. You might feel your recovery is a little better, but you're not going to see much in the way of mass. I really think that Anavar is I think most cycles really need a base of testosterone, and this is not there are people who could speak to this more on a chemical level, like Dr. Rand, and maybe why. I speak more from, yes, I have studied a lot of this stuff in books and journals and things like that, but I go more by what I see practically and what I actually see happening in front of me with the athletes that I work with. And it seems that most cycles, in my opinion, need a base of testosterone. And that could be as low as 250 milligrams a week up to 750 milligrams a week, depending on a lot of factors. Anybody who goes beyond that, it's getting a little bit crazy. But I think that if you used a small amount of testosterone with the Anavar, you would see a lot more positive effects just by adding in that small amount of testosterone. And another good effect of Anavar is that it helps to free up the testosterone that's bound. So it creates more free testosterone, and free testosterone is really what gives you the positive effects of testosterone. If it's bound by sex hormone binding globulin, if it's bound, it can't really do what you want it to do. So the Anavar helps to free up some of that testosterone. So to answer your question specifically, you could try it. If you do, maybe 30 milligrams, wouldn't go longer than 6-8 weeks at the most. I would definitely detoxify your liver afterwards anytime you use an oral anabolic. But I think that if you would just take 250 milligrams of testosterone with it, and maybe an anti-estrogen with that, maybe like 0.5 milligrams of Arimidex every day, or even every other day, you would see a lot more benefits if you stack that with Anavar. So hope that helps.
Awesome.
Okay, so this question is about what has become termed as reverse dieting. So basically that usually means when usually people will reverse diet when they're getting ready for a show, and then they want to figure out what they should do after the show with their diet, in terms of calories and carbohydrates and proteins, like how to reverse out of the diet without gaining a whole lot of fat, and possibly, if they're smart, using the reverse dieting period to also possibly have a nice jump in muscle mass, because as I've described before on this show, when the body is getting ready for a competition or even a photo shoot where you're really trying to drive your body fat down low, you're generally very depleted. The nervous system is shot. the muscles are very, very depleted and overworked. You're doing a ton of cardio. You're maybe doing a lot of posing or routine practice or whatever it is you're doing. So you're really, really, the body is just, kind of just driven into a hole. And then when you come out of a show, hopefully you're still training, still doing some cardio, but the stress is off of you. So the cortisol levels will, be lower. You have the opportunity right then to use calories to your advantage and sort of get almost like a rebound after a show, which I always try to do with my clients, is get that rebound, because it's almost like you've put in a lot of work, like say in the last 6 weeks before a show. You're training as hard as you can, but you're not really manifesting muscle growth. You're really just hoping to maintain size, but you're not really manifesting muscle growth. And it's almost like it's like, in a weird way, saved up so that after the show you can kind of slingshot off of all that work you've been doing. And once the calories are back in you and the stress levels are lower, you can almost add that muscle in that you couldn't before the show. So I see that a lot with people, and it does work. So when it comes to reverse dieting, now he specifically asked me about somebody who was eating, say, about 120 to 250 grams of carbs a day, depending on what body part he's training. So what would be the best way to reverse out of that? I don't recommend anybody double, triple, go crazy. I think that the body still is in a very, very delicate state after a competition or when it's dieted down. So I still think you need to reverse out slowly and gradually. So I would look to add in, he's talking specifically about carbs, so I'm going to just talk about carbs. I would look to add in, maybe on the low days, the first week, maybe about 50 grams extra carbs per day, so jump from 120 to 170, and on the the higher days, maybe up to about 100 grams, so go from 250 to 350, and then whatever you do in the other middle days, somewhere in that range of 50 grams to 100 grams of extra carbs. See how that affects you for the first week, and then the following week, I would maybe do an extra 25 grams on the low days, and then maybe an extra 75 grams on the high days, and then kind of each week you're adding in a little bit less than the week before, but slowly building up over a month or a 6 week period, up to where maybe you're around double the carbohydrates that you were right before a show. Now these are loose numbers, because again, if I'm working with somebody personally, then I see what's going on with their physique, so I can adjust based on that. But I just think more generalized, if you're dieting on 120 to 250 grams of carbs per day for a competition, you should be able to go into progress season somewhere around 240 grams on low days and 500 grams on high days, and start and build muscle mass while not completely blowing your condition and becoming the Pillsbury Doughboy, and losing everything that you worked for. So I think those will give you a pretty good, solid numbers to work with. But again, make the first week a good jump, and then make the jumps each week after that a little bit less than the week before. Watch yourself in the mirror. Forget about your body weight. Watch yourself in the mirror and see what's happening. If you're adding on body fat a little too quickly for your taste, pull back a little bit. If you think you have some room, you're still staying really lean, and you jump on the scale and you're not gaining much weight, your metabolism may still be flying. It may be working really, really hard, so you can maybe add a little bit more. So I was just trying to give you some numbers at a base. But again, make it a gradual process. Try not, I know this is related, but unrelated. Try not to go crazy with cheat meals after, because a lot of people, I know it's hard. You've been dieting, you want all this food. Try not to go crazy, because you literally will gain 30 pounds of water weight. It's very uncomfortable. It's not healthy. You'll look fat 2 days after a show, even though you're not holding a lot of body fat. There'll be so much water. You'll be miserable. So keep that under control. And if you want, you can even use, if you want to have a cheat meal a day, you can use those as your extra carbs over your regular meals or something like that. Again, make it a gradual process. Don't go crazy on those cheat meals, and you'll reverse out nicely. You'll gain muscle mass, and you won't completely blow your condition.
What about your protein, though? Can we talk about that first?
I didn't approach the protein because he didn't mention it. And I think that generally when people are getting ready for shows, I think protein, for at least most of my clients, stays close to where it was even at the beginning of a diet. So I think you could stay about the same.
Okay.
I don't think you have to do too much adjusting I think the carbohydrates is the
Is
main.
the key. Okay.
And then listen, when your carbohydrates go really high, you can bring your fats down a little bit.
Right.
So, because I don't usually recommend for most having fats and carbs in the same meal.
Yeah.
Why? They're both energy sources. I think they're better separated. So if you're adding in the carbs via, one meal that would normally be just a fat meal, and you're putting those carbs into that meal, get rid of the fats from that meal.
There's a lot of people that eat all three. I used to do that all the time before we started working together. I never really paid attention to only either have protein and fat or protein and carbs. A lot of time I had all three, and that's one of the mistakes I was making.
Yeah, and listen, and some people can eat all. Some people have very, very, tremendous metabolism.
Doesn't matter what they're doing.
And but they actually can get away with it, especially if they eat very, very low fat protein sources. Like if they're eating, you have to think about it. If you're eating a piece of steak versus a piece of whitefish, the steak may have 10 grams of fat in it, let's just say. The whitefish might have 1. So they might be able to get away with adding a little bit of extra fats in there and evening it out. But generally, again, this is hard for me to do when it's not an individual right in front of me with their numbers and their physique. But generally, I like to separate them, and I find that most people do better when they actually separate larger carb meals from the fat meals, especially timing the carb meals, like I've said many times. First meal of the day, right after training. I find that works best for most people. Other exceptions there are, but obviously it worked for you, Dave, as you've gotten in much better condition, held a lot more size. So
awesome. All right, thanks, Biggie.
Okay, guys, so this is the reason why I'm saying what I'm going to say now is I've been getting a lot of questions. I'm very, very happy and appreciative that people have been contacting me via my show, Be Bar Broser. A lot of new possible people who want to work with me privately. But they look at my website, which is, of course, in the credits at the beginning. And they go in there, and basically when it comes to my personal training, where I work with you one-on-one online, I have a basic program, an intermediate program, and an advanced program, competition level. And I just want to explain a little bit what some of them means, because people have had some questions about the wording. First of all my programs work in 4-week blocks, whether it's basic, intermediate, or advanced. So basically it means that if you sign up at 4 weeks at a time. At the end of the 4 weeks, if you want to continue, sign up again. That's the way we work. Now, when it comes to the basic program, when it comes to the diet or the training, what I do is, and this is the most basic level for people who don't want to spend that much money, maybe don't need as much help, maybe they're beginners, and they could stay on things for longer. So what I do is I create a diet based, that's going to hold you over for the full 4 weeks. So I get all your numbers, I ask you all my questions, and I say, here's a diet I want you to follow for the next 4 weeks. When the 4 weeks is over, if you want to continue again, there'll be another diet for the next 4 weeks. That's the basic program. Same thing with the training. I will create a training program for you that you'll use for all 4 weeks. It'll be individualized to you and everything that you want to do, but you use the same program for 4 weeks. When you go to the next level, which actually I think on my website actually says intermediate advanced. What we're doing is over the 4-week period is I'm actually going to, when it comes to training, I'm going to create new workouts for you every week. So every week of the 4 weeks, the workouts will change. So whatever you did week 1, you won't be doing week 2. Whatever you did week 2, won't be week 3. New workouts all 4 weeks. The diet then becomes 2 weeks. So basically I create a diet. At the 2-week point, you will check in with me, photos, weight, and if at that time I need to make adjustments, I will. That'll carry over for the next 2 weeks, and that's how we go for those 4 weeks, and then again it will repeat. Contest prep level, if you're getting ready for a contest, photo shoot, or you want to really have me monitor everything at the most intense level, training is the same. Still, I create a new training program for you. All 4 weeks, you get a new training program every single week. But with the diet then becomes weekly check-ins. So every single week, generally I like Fridays or Saturdays, you will send me your photos, your weight, I will look at what you look like, and I'll make diet tweaks every single week of the 4 weeks. So I just wanted to kind of give you how that works a little bit, because a lot of people, they kind of get confused with the wording.
Yeah.
So hopefully that clears it up for you. And then of course I also have the subscription program on there, which you can read about. And I also do Skype calls, which I've been getting a lot of call for lately. Consults, we just set up a time. Wherever you are in the world, we do it on Skype. the 30 minutes or the 60 minutes, and that way we just go over whatever questions, whatever it is that you want to during that period of time. So I hope that that clears up my programs for you. And again, I appreciate all you guys supporting me, watching the videos, and everybody who's been inquiring about my programs.
Awesome.